Hey guys, in this tutorial we're going to talk about the 3D Motion Key Editor and how you can use it to modify your 3D motions. Following this tutorial we're actually going to use the motion we create from this tutorial and continue it on with our 2D motion layer editing tutorial. So basically if you've watched the Intro to Character Animation tutorial, you'll realize that generally the recommended workflow is that you start with your 3D motion modifications and then you move into 2D. And the reason for that is because with the 2D motion layer editing, those are going to be things like stretches and squashes at a specific angle, and if you change the angle of the character, those aren't going to translate well into different angles. So if you're going to do the 2D motion layer editing, make sure you have your angle established already. But in this tutorial, we're going to just be worrying about 3D motion key editing. So let's go ahead and add an animation to our character Saul on the screen here first. So I'm going to go to the motion folder and of course 3D motions for this tutorial, and in our move folder we have a bunch of different runs and walks and all that stuff. I'm just going to apply a simple sprint to Saul here, and you can see he crouches down and starts running at the screen. So he's at a 0-degree angle. So let's go ahead and go back to frame 1, and what I'm going to do is select Saul and I'm going to use the right bracket key to rotate him to a 90-degree angle. And this is the angle we're going to be using for the duration of this tutorial. So you can see here he's in the first stride of his sprint right there. Let's press F3 actually and go into the timeline. And we'll open up our 3D motion layer track here. And you can see that we have the clip right there and the 3D motion layer track for the keyframe editing down here. Now what I want to do first is I actually want to extend the length of this clip. We want to slow it down a little bit so we can better see our modifications. So with this clip selected, I can go up to here or press Ctrl S to toggle the speed modification. I'm going to stretch this to about 40 frames. There we go. And the reason I'm doing this is because at each 10 frames now, he's going to be at a different part of his stride. So here he's ground contact, there he's up in the air, and there he's ground contact again, and up in the air one more time. So that makes it easier to kind of count the frames and get a general idea of the timing for this motion. So we'll zoom in a little bit and let's take a look at the animation now. So you can see it's a bit slower. That's good because we want to see the modifications that we're going to make clearly. So first of all, let's go back to frame 1. And the first thing I want to do is I want to change his posture a little bit. So to do that, I can actually go down to the 3D motion key editor here, or I can use the M hotkey, or I can simply double click in the 3D motion layer editor track if I have my timeline open, which is a really cool shortcut. And then you can see the dummy of Saul right here. And if we want to kind of improve his posture, we can just select like his lower back there, make sure we have our rotate tool on, and I can just bring his back up like this. And that should be pretty good right there. And maybe we want to bring his head back down a little bit, so let's select his head and bring that back to a normal height right there. Now if you're at frame 1, every modification you make is going to last throughout the duration of your clip. So you can see if I scrub through the timeline here, now his entire run is a bit more upright, which is what we're looking for in this case. Now I want to add a bit more of a dynamic feel to this run. So what I can do is a couple of things here. The first thing I want to do is I want to adjust his head position. So right here his head is upright, but maybe when he's down on the ground making floor contact, I want to kind of bring his head down, like he's going to kind of pop it back up again. So you can see that as a keyframe there when I do that modification, and I just stretch back up or slide back up to here on the timeline. And then I can either bring my head back, or if I want the exact same position, I can right click on this keyframe, copy it, and then go ahead and paste it at frame 20. And that'll bring it back to that position right there. Oh, sorry, I went to frame 19 there. Okay, and then we can, see we have the head moving up and then back down. Maybe right here we want it to be down. So kind of just move it back down like that. And that'll add a keyframe, and back up to here. We will bring the head back up. Of course, here we actually want the keyframe to be the same as the first one, since this is a loopable motion. So we'll select copy, and then on this one, just paste down at frame 40. And so there we have, let's take a look at this one. So you can see it looks a little bit more energetic, like he's kind of pounding his head, lifting his head back and forth as he's running along. Now another way we can make this a bit more dynamic is take a look at the arms. So the arms here are kind of just going in front of the body. What if I want to make his arm movement a little bit more dynamic as well? Well, let's go ahead and select his arm here, and let's go ahead and bring it back. So this right arm, we're going to bring it back like that, and I want to select the forearm and maybe slide that back like that. That should be fine. And then the other arm, let's bring it a bit forward and rotate that. I'm also using the rotation tool here, just so you're aware. And we'll just bring this on a little bit forward. Something like that would be okay. And you can see there that looks a little bit more like a more dynamic starting position for the run. So let's take a look here. Then right here, where you can see that we have the frames going through here, and then right here where his arms are on the other side, we want to do the same thing. Let's just go ahead and select his upper arm, bring that way back like that. That should be good right there. And then select the right arm and bring it a little bit forward. Let's use that. There we go. Use the x-axis there, and then we should be a little bit better. And there's already a keyframe right there, so we don't have to worry about that. So let's go ahead and see what that looks like. And again, this frame right here, you can see that's the normal position right there. What I want to do again is copy this first keyframe back to that last keyframe. So copy and last keyframe here, and just go ahead and paste that. And that's a bit better. So let's take a look at it now. Alright, so now the run looks a bit more dynamic. And we can even add more body motion into that as well if we'd like, but we'll just leave it here for now. We'll just play that back real quick. You can see that goes down like that. And if we also wanted to maybe raise the body a little bit, we can actually do that as well. So here he's in the air. Make sure that he's in the air. You're at a point where he's in the air. And we'll select his hips. And what I want to do is actually keep his feet locked. And let's just go ahead and use the transform key right here and bring his whole torso a little bit up like that. And that will do that modification right there. And then when he comes down to the ground, we can do the same thing and kind of bring him a little bit further down. And then back up to here. Bring him a little bit up. We can also copy that keyframe, something like that. And this will add a little bit more bounce to his step. So here he's kind of, coming down again right there. And of course at the last frame, we want to make sure that it's the exact same as the first one. Since we're going to loop this, so click and copy, click and paste in the last frame right there. So now we have a bit more dynamic. It's slow right now, but once we speed this up, it'll seem a lot more dynamic than the previous one. So that's all the modifications we're going to make for this case. Now let's go ahead and save this motion. So I'm going to open up my collect clip track here, and we'll just click and drag. We'll click and drag in the duration of the clip here. And what I want to do is right click that and select export 3D motion, and we can export this as a tutorial run. And just save that. And then what we can do is we don't need Sol to have this motion anymore. Now if I don't want to apply that save clip, we only did some quick modifications here. So what I can do is right click on this clip here actually, and I can flatten the motion clip. And that'll basically take out all of these motion key edits, but it'll keep that data. So the motion looks the same, you can see, but it took out all of those key edits. So now we can do a fresh round of editing if we want on our 3D motion. But what I'm going to do first is just go ahead and make sure this speed thing is on. We're going to speed this up a little bit just so it looks a little bit faster and better. We'll speed up to about 25 frames, and I'm going to then toggle the loop option there, and we'll loop it a few times. Let's take a look at what that looks like here. So now if we play back, you can see we have a nice dynamic sprint right there. It looks a little bit more like a sprint. His arms are moving more, and we get a little bit more of an effect there. Let's compare it side by side to the regular one. So I'm going to zoom out here a little bit. Let's go to our content manager and bring in another actor. We'll bring in Walter. Maybe Walter's not really a sprinter, so we'll just bring him in here. And once Walter loads up, let's go ahead and make sure we're at frame 1 first of all, and bring him to a 90-degree pose. And then we'll just go ahead and apply that same animation. So move, I think the sprint is up here. There we go, run sprint. Okay, and of course we want to have our object related track selected. Let's select Walter there. And with 3D motion open, I want to, I believe that was actually at, we'll just go to the add the actors here. I'm going to add Saul. I forget how many frames that was, 3D motion. Looks like it was about 25 frames. Okay, so I'm going to stretch this to 25 frames just so I can, you know, see a side-by-side comparison here. So we'll stretch it to about 25 right there. That should be good. And then we'll toggle looping on. Let's take a look at the difference between these two motions. So let's close down the timeline actually. And so you can see the motion with Saul is a bit more dynamic. It's a lot bouncier. There's more bouncing hips involved, and it looks a bit more like a human motion as opposed to a cartoon mouse-like motion right there. So that's kind of how you can use the 3D motion key editor to add some dynamic movement to your clips. You can even create your own motions that way as well. It's very easy to create a walking cycle with the 3D motion key editor, and you can see that we can even change these to different angles. Let's change it to a maybe 0 degree profile, and let's change Walter to 0 degrees as well. Let's take a look at the difference here. So you can see there we have a bit more of a bouncing with Saul right there. We may want to do some adjustments on his left knee, but we're not going to worry about this angle for now. We'll just bring him back to the 90-degree angle, since that's the one we were creating this motion for. And let's just delete Walter. Walter doesn't need to be here anymore. Alright, so we have our run. Let's do another example here. In this example, I'm actually going to bring in a 3D clip from iClone, and I'm going to blend that into this clip. So let's go Alt-Tab over to iClone here, and we have our friend Eddie, who's a character from one of our developers, Celigon. We're actually going to apply some motions to Eddie here. And those are from the Monster Motion Volume 2 content pack. You can find that in our content store. And we're just going to apply a couple of simple motions here. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. We're going to have this jump start. I'm going to just double click that and apply it to Eddie. So he'll jump up into the air. And then I'm going to apply this jump end. And he'll just fall to the ground like that. So that's our completed motion. Let's look at it from a 90-degree angle and see what it's going to look like with Saul in CrazyTalk Animator. So there you go. That's going to be the motion right there. So what we're going to do is I'm going to combine this motion together with my sprint. So first things first, let's press F3, go into the timeline, and we'll open up our character track for Eddie. And the same thing, you can save the motion by opening the collect clip track here. So I'll go to the motion track first. You can see those are our motions combined together. And I'm going to open up the collect clip track and just click and drag for the duration of my motion there. I'll go ahead and right click that and just add motion to library. And we'll call this one tutorial jump. There we go, that's fine for me. And we'll save that to our custom iClone motion folder. Go ahead and press save. And then we should have, if I go to my motion section, the custom folder right here, tutorial jump. And you can see the pose is exactly the same as the character on the screen right now. So all I need to do is, first of all, let's go back to CrazyTalk Animator and make sure I'm on the right frame. So I'm going to press F3, and maybe about here is where we want to start our jump. It doesn't really matter, anywhere after the original clips will be just fine. So maybe to frame 80, and then let's go back to iClone one more time, and simply click and drag that motion directly from the Content Manager, Alt-Tab over to CrazyTalk Animator, and apply it to our buddy Saul. So we get that nice soft jump right there. And you can see that from here to here, he is finishing his run and then just pops into that pose right there. That's not really what we want. Let's do some blending. So I'm going to go back and zoom out a little bit on the timeline. First of all, we can actually just flatten this this whole section of clips here, so it's not we don't have all those keyframes. So now we have a 3 stride run up and then jump. So that's what it's going to look like. Obviously not blended in at all. So let's go ahead and do some blending. I'm going to select this second clip here, and let's see what happens if I just try and do some straight blending from this motion to the next one. So You can see this motion here, the tutorial jump starts like this. So what if I try to blend that in to this clip right here? Let's just maybe move it a bit. Whoops, move it over a bit. And you can see this here is a transition area. So this is where it's going to be blending from one motion to the next. And you can see that it's going to kind of have a weird, pop back into that straight pose. So it's almost like he's running and then he stops and starts his jump. That's fine, but what if we want him to have a running jump? We don't want him to be stopping in between. Well, let's take a look. Let's move this back a little bit first. And let's take a look at the end of our sprint and the beginning of our jump. So right here is the end of the sprint. He's kind of upright, right about here. He's kind of tilted forward. And let's take a look if there's any comparable place in the second clip where his upper body is tilted forward. I'm going to zoom out. Whoops. I'm going to zoom out a little bit. You can see that he's upright right here, but maybe down here, this is where he's preparing for his jump. So we want his body to be relatively in that position. And maybe we'll go ahead and right click at that point and break the clip. And since we don't need this whole beginning part, I can just just click that and delete it. And now we'll have something a bit better. Let's move this clip over and zoom in a little bit. And let's take a look at what we have now. Let's zoom out so we can see Saul's full jump, at least his body there. And so now you can see that we have this kind of going forward like that. And what if I click this transition area now and I blend this one in? Let's take a look at what happens. So you can see he will kind of, let's take a look at his feet actually. Let's pay attention to his feet. That'll make it a bit easier. Just pay attention to his feet. So he's going to be jumping off his right foot. You can see his right foot is planted right there and he's jumping off that right foot. Now everything looks okay, except that if we take a closer look, you can see that his left foot is kind of going through the ground, which is not what we want. Maybe we can even also just bring this transition area a little bit further back as well. So there we go. Let's take a look. Okay. That looks okay, except for the fact that obviously, like I mentioned, his left foot is going through the ground if his right foot is indeed planted. Now, because we have two separate clips here, we can't really flatten the clips. What I need to do is go ahead and save them. So let's open the Collect Clip track right there. And I want to do some 3D motion key editing on the left foot. But if I'm in a transition area like here, I want to try to avoid doing that in a transition area, simply because you can get confused with the clips and what transition is going on where and everything like that. So it's just easier to actually save the clip at this point. And I'm going to click in the Collect Clip track right there. And let's go ahead and just make sure we're at the right frame there. Okay. And right click here and export this as a 3D motion. We'll call this Run and Jump. How's that sound? Run and Jump. And save that in our custom motion folder. So then I'll go back to frame 1 here. Select Saul and remove the animation. Right click him and remove animation. And so at frame 0, what I'm going to do now is just go to my custom tab. In our motion folder, we have Run and Jump. And let's go ahead and apply that. And you'll go into a 0 degree profile, which is just fine. And let's just go back to frame 1 then and bring him back to a 90 degree profile. Select him, hit the bracket key twice, and he'll go to that 90 degrees. So let's take a look at our motion now. Okay, that's just fine. It actually looks not bad, but if you pay close attention, obviously, that is a big no-no right there. We don't want his foot to be going through the ground. We want that left leg to be kind of swinging in place, swinging above the ground, rather. So this frame 71, is where we want to make our first modification. Let's zoom in on the track right here. And what we can do is right here, I want to simply double-click in the 3D motion layer track right there. And that'll bring up my tool. And I can double-click again, and I'll add a keyframe. And that's where I want to start my modification from. So about here, where his foot is at the lowest, I want to simply go into my 3D motion key editor right here. You can in fact see that indeed his left leg is below the grid right there. So let's select that left leg right there. And I need to make sure I unlock the foot, otherwise nothing will happen. Let's select the left lower leg and use the rotation tool and rotate that up like this. So that's about good right there. That's above the ground right there. And you can see we get a nice keyframe right there. And then what we'll have is something like this. And you can see that his left leg stays behind the leg. If you want something like that, that's fine. But if you want him to have, like, both legs down, what we can do to fix that is right here. Just go back to normal. And the way we do that is by using this button here and resetting back to normal. So then we can see we have this prep, and boom, just like that. So it's bringing his knee up a bit more naturally. There we go. And that's our run and jump right there. Now, one last thing to fix here is that he's jumping straight up. It doesn't seem logical that he's kind of running forward and then jumping straight up. What we want him to be doing is kind of like jumping forward and kind of add a bit more motion to that, a bit more angle to his jump rather. So let's take a look at right here. What I want him to do is maybe about right here. The height of his jump is right about frame 81, I guess. So what I want to do is maybe at this frame, let's go ahead and select our character's hips. And what I can do is maybe put him at an angle using his hip right here. So let's make sure that we have our feet unlocked, and I have the hip selected, and let's kind of just rotate him forward like that. And if we do that, his arms will kind of go in front of him, which we don't want. Let's select his shoulders. We want to mirror those shoulders and go ahead and bring those shoulders back. Oops. The other way. There we go. Something like that will be fine. So then we have him kind of jumping forward like that. And then here we can maybe bring him back to the original angle. So here is the height of his jump right there. And then he starts to fall. So about here, I think we can go ahead and reset that position. And we'll have a nice dynamic kind of forward. And then he'll tuck his legs in like that. And then when he's falling about here, let's go ahead and rotate him the other way. So let's grab his waist again. And he's way up here. The dummy's way up here in the sky. Let's move him forward like that. And almost like he's going to be landing at an angle. So he's coming up at this angle and then tucking his knees underneath and then landing at that angle right there. And then when he lands, we can go ahead and go back down here. And you can see he's at a little bit of an angle right there. So maybe right here we want him to, unless he's landing on a hill, when he lands right here, we want him to go back to the regular position as well. So let's go ahead and reset that. And then we should get a nice, let's take a look at this a little bit closer. There we go. Okay, let's play that back and see what it looks like. Okay, it's not bad. Maybe a little bit further down. I think we want to try and maintain this angle for a little bit longer. So let's right-click that, copy that keyframe, maybe to about here, and we'll just go ahead, right-click and paste that. And there we go. There, I think that's a bit smoother. So let's take a look at that. Go back and forth. Okay, I think that looks good for me. Now there's a little bit of foot jittering here. I think right about here, we can go ahead and fix that. By just modifying the foot a little bit. Let's try and modify the angle. I think here it's going to the side. So here we can just take that 1 foot. You can see that it's kind of going to the side there. Select that 1 foot right there. Bring it back to the front. And oops, now that made the other. Since we had mirror on, let's actually just delete that keyframe right there. And make sure we have mirror off. And bring that foot back to right there. I think that should probably fix that foot jitter issue. There we go. And that looks a bit better. So now let's take a look at our entire motion. Zoom out a little bit. Maybe I can even bring the timeline up a little bit and play that back. Alright, I think that's pretty good right there, and that's his ending pose right there. So that's basically how you use the 3D motion layer editor to kind of customize the poses in your animation. It's very useful for frame by frame keyframe animation. You can create your own animations from scratch. Or if you want to modify the motions that you have, either from iClone, external motions from the internet, or from CrazyTalk, you can do that as well quite easily like I just showed you. And again, just a quick reminder that when you're doing these, if you're doing a full modification of a motion, you want to start always with the 3D motion layer editing tools before you move on to the 2D motion layer editing and the sprite changes and the layer changes and all that stuff. Get your base 3D motion done first, and then move on to the other nitty-gritty 2D stuff. Okay, so then again, since we already have our motion prepared, we don't have to save this motion. We can if we want, but I'm going to prepare this for the next tutorial, which is the 2D motion layer editing. So to do that, since the only edits I've made are in the 3D motion layer track, I can simply right-click my clip right here, and I can flatten motion clip, and that'll get rid of all that stuff. And we can play back. This is our full motion one more time. Just jumping and landing, and that's just fine. Alright, so thanks for watching our tutorial on 3D motion key editing, and make sure you watch the tutorial on 2D motion key editing to follow this tutorial to see how we can further refine this motion and make it a bit more dynamic.